simulated version of him. So, but man, one thing he's good. He gets excited. I think that's key in sales and recruiting and everything is like, you got to have passion for your product or your whatever it is you're trying to get someone else to do. And that's like, they know you're doing it and you're clearly excited and you honestly are. Like, I don't know. It's like, there's a difference between like used car salesmen, right? Where you're just like, I am trying to just use weird tricks of humanity to pressure people into doing something they clearly don't want to do. And I know is probably not good, but it's good for me. And there's sales in terms of like, like we're building a movement here and like I'm in the movement and like you should join. And it's like 100 times easier, I think, and more natural and more effective when you are the choir that you're preaching. You really believe that you're doing something cool and your product is good or whatever. Anyway, something I wanted to add. How's my internet? I see you guys have all frozen for me. Think I'm in the wrong room. Well put.
I'm seeing you just fine.
Move you over now. I'm moving people real time.
Thank you.
I don't take any offense.
I hope not. I mean, all of our success will be because of you.
All right. That's great and all, but I don't want to be in your room. Trying to move you. Here we go. I think I'm in the wrong room. There we go. I got people more or less assigned. No one else has names written that didn't. Yeah. All right. So how's it going? Who we got here?
Actually, I'd be curious, Josh, how did you market Harvey Mud Incubator? What does your marketing trajectory look like?
Yeah.
That stuck out?
Yeah, well, that was the thing that
Any tactic strategies?
oh, sorry.
Thanks, Randy.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
All right, that's better. Wait, did you catch that, Josh? Should I repeat the question?
It just looked like you were out in space, or sounded like it sounded like. But I got
That's
it.
my background.
Yeah. No, yeah. Well, that was the thing I was talking about. Like, I remember meeting with Gary at one of those places in Claremont, and just talking about like, are we going to be for everyone, or just Harvey Mudd? Are we going to be just sort of for students or for fun? Are we going to try and actually invest money and make money? And so some of those key decisions I think help, and it made it easier. Like, I think sticking to Harvey Mudd to start. I mean, it's such a niche and it's pretty easy to like, well, we have a professor at Harvey Mudd here who can tell. I went to the career fair, just, it was a long process. Like, it was weird to have this kind of like, I expect this to go on for like, 10 plus years. So I guess I'll start laying groundwork and going to career fair, even though at the time we weren't even taking students. It was only for alums. But I don't know. I know there'll be a lot of Harvey Mudders there. In a few years, there'll be alums. It's the same as clinic.
So you start out as word of mouth then, basically.
Yeah, word of mouth. And then, which is easy enough when it's a small, tight-knit community. So yeah, it was like sales. It was actually it was the first time I ever did like fundraising. We bootstrapped DreamHost and I raised some money for HMC Inc. But I believed in it and I was putting in money, and it makes it pretty easy. And you find other Harvey Mudders who are, especially ones who've been entrepreneurs and are successful, right? Not only do they care about entrepreneurship, they care about Harvey Mudd and they have money. It's like a pretty niche, like, 30 people that you need to find and talk to, and they're probably connected to them already on LinkedIn. So there's that. And then I also did even just straight up Facebook ads targeting Harvey Mudd alums, just to tell them about HMC Inc. and apply. Not to like invest. Well, first of all, you can't do that legally, I think. Solicit private investment publicly. It has to be via word of mouth for getting fundraising. But unless you're doing crowdfunding, and then you have to go through a whole crowdfunding platform and all that. But for getting people to apply and hear about HMC Inc., that was like, I think it's been $400 or something, and basically reached every Mudder who ever went on Facebook. So it's so much easier when you pitch, as opposed to like, if I was just like, I'm going to be an accelerator for anything like YC. I'm just going to be like another YC that anyone in the world can apply. And it really is like, okay, but what about YC? Well, maybe you didn't get into YC or something. Like, it's just not a good like brand of like, why would I do yours instead of YC? Unless I'd already been like, well, we incubated Google and Microsoft, or or something like that. You could use that. But starting from scratch, you gotta, you gotta do what makes sense, right? Product, market, effort, fit. But yeah, no, I'm still, and now I'm thinking anyone. It's always the biggest hurdles for me with HMC Inc. I feel like are just the getting people to apply. So it's all market, word of mouth, getting the word out about applying, and then getting people to go to demo day. Getting the word out and getting a big group and making demo day. And it gets sort of easier every time a little bit, but then it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. There's been a lag, and some people who were investors or were going to start a company aren't anymore, or so it's like you can't just. That was the thing always at DreamHost. I felt like we'd always have this one thing, we'd have this big push, and we'd reach this new level, we get all these signups, and I'd feel like now we're finally done. Like we figured it all out. It's just smooth sailing from here on. Once we do this extra data center, or once we upgrade this, and once we switch this database structure around, or once we start advertising here, that's it. We're done. And it's always good for like a month or something, and then you're like, oh no, I need to figure something else out.
You have a lot of problems with people applying and not showing up.
No, well, this is the first year that we're trying this way, where it was really just like register and you don't have to get approved. Everyone can just.
Oh, I see.
So that's different. I think up until now it was like, well, if you got if you got in, you got the money up front, and everybody came. Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't so much an issue, especially once I made it like 1 week. I was like, you can't show for 1 week for $50,000. All right, like raise more money and meet other people and work on your thing that you care about. It's
very telling.
Yeah, that'll be like, well, we made a mistake.
Yeah.
I think the first year though was the most charming, Josh.
Yeah.
Maybe not the most fruitful or the most useful for the entrepreneur, because that year we ran it like a television reality program. Josh had a property that had a house that had nobody in it in this deluxe part of Santa Monica. And it was a big house with another big house in the background. So everybody moved into that house for the summer session and lived there together. Too bad it wasn't filmed. We probably could have sold it to NBC or something like that. It was really cool. And I think everybody had a lot of fun. And of course, it was just as productive and fruitful as any other way of doing it. It was just very difficult to repeat because Josh just happened to have that property then. And it was no longer available a year later. But I like it a lot. I'm the kind of person who really likes personal contact in every possible way you can do it, right? I don't like this Zoom stuff or remote or telephone or TV or anything. To me, even though it's cost inefficient to the extreme, getting together in one really cool location and hanging out together seems to add a component to the interaction and the cooperation and the enthusiasm that you just can't ever quite get by any other means. And I really like the old-fashioned approach, but it's impractical, as you know. Maybe it's advisable to do it this way. I think the ideal is kind of a hybrid. You do it this way most of the time, then you have when you don't have COVID to deal with, then you have a big meeting where everybody flies to some place or drives to some place and you hang out for a day, So that's why that was my favorite class, the very first class.
Yeah. Yeah, this was the worst.
This class sucks.
It's not our fault, not your fault. No, but I think also it's the building of trust and relationships is so much easier in person than any other way. And whether it's for fundraising or sales or friendship.
I don't know about the details, but is there a way to where you have this format, which is open to all, and then you have the next year where you basically, you're probably dealing within the cohorts that have the funding already, that are further in their company building process, which means they have expenses they can earmark for masterminds like this, where obviously you can't have 150 people in one house, but then folks that are self-selective, right? The buy-in is going to be, I don't know, $1,000 or something to partake in that mastermind.
Whoa, Yeah, switch it up. I don't know. I recommend
because
don't do accelerators
I-
that you have to pay to go in. I feel like
well, it's skin the game. I mean, I would like to think people are getting value here. I believe. I mean, you bring some of these. I mean, I'm here part of because I want to learn too. I'm seeing some really recognize some names, like people that have done some like amazing things, and there's a huge amount of value. And to being in person, where you're bumping shoulders in hallways, etc., like that's high value. And folks who are starting a business, it behoove them to understand the value and see the value in that.
yeah.
Just a random thought.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that, well, we're trying to figure out how we're going to do it. And I'm wondering, if we're going to do it in the spring again or be the same, or hopefully there's less COVID by May or something. And I had switched it to this 1 week thing like last year. So maybe it'll be something like in the fall, we'll do it like this. And it's sort of the application process and everyone can do it. And then the companies that do get selected and invested in at the end, there's like a 1 week thing in May.
Yeah.
More like the old style, and they're still demoed in person and physical, and a big, event, which I think is important. But,
I'm hijacking the conversation, but I think I was going to say EO does this, right? Entrepreneur. I mean, they do this, so something else to consider anyway.
Yeah. What, Riley? I saw you raising your hand, and then Wyatt. I'll figure it
Oh
out.
yeah. No, I just had a quick question about the marketing and the split test and what have you, and kind of similar to your story there, Josh, where you said you basically targeted on Facebook.
Yeah.
And you had said at the beginning there's like 19 different avenues of
Right.
reaching out to people and just to do it a little bit more personalized for yourself. But I'm wondering if you can give, or Raymond could give some tips on which ones you think might be the most fruitful for doing that initial reach out, especially when you're bootstrapping yourself. You don't want to spend thousands of dollars in marketing, but you want to get solid data back.
Well, I mean, what Randy was saying is about, it really is sales first. Like, think of it as sales. Like, there is no marketing till you're past where sales doesn't scale anymore. Where right now, right? Like 3 people would move the needle. For 3 customers would be huge for probably any startup. And you can get 3 customers via sales, not really marketing. I mean, they all later they feed off each other, right? Like, it's easier to do sales, like seeing your ad on the Super Bowl or whatever. Or they know that your brand is big and you're trustworthy. But early on, it's sales. So I would say, the way what Traction says is, look at those 19. It's different for different companies, right? Like, it really depends on your company, because some of those things are like, have a community, build a community, and some of them are, engineering, marketing via engineering, which we kind of did that at Dreamo somewhere. I just have some cool idea that I wasn't really sure what the business would be. There wasn't really a business. I would just be some like almost a hobby thing I just want to put out. So I do it like in a weekend. So it's engineering as market, and you just put it out there, and then like 1 out of 5 of those would get a little bit viral as just a free web service or something. And then maybe we just make sure they knew it was hosted, from DreamHost, something like that. And you have that advantage, or most of us have that advantage of, we can do engineering kind of for free. So that's like an advantage that might make more sense for us than like someone else doing a startup, where they're like, what am I going to do? Hire engineers to do marketing? I could just spend money to do marketing. And so I think that the point of that is, like, you look at those 19, you should come up with an idea for all of them. And then you should look back and go like, just like throw out 16 of those, take the top 3 that you think would actually work for what your business is. So it might be, I'm just going to go word of mouth to my friends and, family and get them to try it. And that would actually be useful. Or like, I'm going to put an ad on Craigslist, you think would be more useful. Or I'm going to actually, buy a list and start cold emailing people, but whatever those 19 channels are. Or, I'm going to get on a platform like for you, I was saying, like, maybe the app store, the watch app store is a good channel for you, but it wouldn't make any sense for, a lot of other startups. And then I don't know why I put in the chat, just like, how far along should companies be before they start fundraising? And I think that's another, the answer to every question is it depends, unfortunately. But I think it's just like the other stuff, where there needs to be product market fit, there needs to be founder market fit, there needs to be team product market fit, brand company team fit. A fundraising should feel like the right, it's like, don't try and make it happen if it's not happening. If it's happening, you'll sort of know. Like, if you're like, hey, I've got this idea and it's a big idea and it's exciting and I'm the only person who can do it and the time is right, and I start just telling my friends and they're like, let me talk to my uncle about that, and his uncle's like, hey, yeah, could you take $1 million today, and you're like, actually I could, or whatever, and then we can actually do this, and or something like that. Or you know, don't just think there's this list of like, oh, I gotta fundraise, gotta start a C corp, gotta get a patent, you know, gotta hire a sales guy. It's not really like that. It's like, but generally I would say it should be when you know what to do with the money, you're pretty confident you know what to do with the money. You know, like I think most companies and startups, like you probably are going to fund it yourself for a while as a side project or whatever. And then hopefully you have the engineering prowess, or one of your co-founders does, is you're not spending, you know, you shouldn't need to spend a lot of money to get to like that MVP. And then a lot of those things, like the different traction things, aren't things that cost money. I mean, maybe they're like literally his advice is like, don't spend more than $1,000 testing each of these. So I mean, hopefully $3,000, you know, he says you should do maybe 3 at a time, and hopefully you'll get one of them that works. So the amount of money we're talking about is like, you know, a couple $1,000s where you've already hopefully got an MVP or at least a sales test or a marketing test that could be out there. So, I mean, when you really want to raise money, it's sort of these inflection points of like, you've de-risked something. There's a stage of like, what's the idea kind of, or do you have a founding team? And then could be a natural time to raise money. They're like, we've got this super team together and we need to raise $1 million just to get to this sort of alpha version of whatever this is. And then, so that could be a thing that makes sense to raise money then. And then you're like launching and things are looking good, but you need to try a lot of marketing, but the product works, but it's still early. You know, maybe that's another time that you're raising money. Then there's that actual like growth stage where you've actually figured out your LTV a little bit. You've found at least one channel that's working and you know how much it costs to acquire customers through that. And you're just like, I mean, the real time, I think the safest time to raise money is when you're just like, every dollar you give me, I can turn into $3, you know? And like, I don't have a doubt in my mind that the only thing holding me back from making money is not having enough money, right? Like that's when it's like, yes, raise money. People still raise money a lot of other times to try and get to that point. And all those I'd say are, you know, questionable, that maybe you don't need to raise money to get to the next stage, even though it's kind of easier. And one thing I like to say is there's a difference between, so in your personal life and for fun, I say spend money, you know, do less work, have more enjoyment by spending money. That's what the not working part of your life is for, right? Is like, don't get too like, I don't know, there are things like, it's hard to, it takes, I'm lucky I now have a lot of money that I have figured these things out, but there are people that they go to Universal Studios and they're like taking a trip to LA for once in their life. They're probably spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on travel and hotels. The ticket to go into Universal Studios is like $99 or $79, something like that. There's crazy lines. Everything's like 2 hours because it's the summer. They have the $99, skip every line in the park pass. You know, it's like double, right? It's double the ticket, but there's never, you get to ride no matter what day of the year it is, for $99, you get to ride every ride in the park without waiting in line, and have lunch and see a show and be done in 4 hours, like the whole thing. And it feels like it makes, I mean, if you just live there and you've got a season pass, you don't want to buy that every time, you ride these all the time. If this is your like once every 10 years or once a lifetime trip, you think that would be a no-brainer to spend the extra $99, you know, per person even, to just have like this so much better experience. But like no one does. You know, it's less than like 1% of the park, I feel like, is buying these passes. And I'm like, that's a mistake. And then you see people with their company and they're spending money like crazy on things that they could do themselves, because they're just like, no, we need to focus on the primary, you know, our one thing that's our value add. And we raised the money, so we might as well, you know, spend it to go a little faster. But the point of working and having a company is to do work and suffer to make money. And then the point of the money is to not suffer and enjoy when you're not working. So don't forget that part. Like the company part is like, yeah, you might have to do a shitty thing instead of outsourcing it, because you just save money. Like you're trying to save money. You got to be cheap and you got to work hard. And then you got to be profitable eventually, or grow fast, or, and then raise money to just pour more, gasoline on the fire. But if you raise a lot of money early, you start to get tempted to be like, hey, this company is kind of like visiting Universal Studios. And now if I spend $199, I'm going to have a much easier time, but it's $99,000 in the company stuff. And I'm not saying never do it, spend wisely, but that's really the two mindsets. It's hard to switch between them because you're either cheap or you're a spendthrift. And you really should be a little bit of both. Like in your job and your startup, you need to be a cheap bastard. And then in your regular life, like it's okay to like get the upgrade, the $4 extra for the nicer entree at dinner or something like that. Like that's what the money's for. But the money is not for, while you're doing your startup, to make your work life easy. Anyway, so don't raise much money. It should be painfully obvious and you know what to do with it, just like hiring people. It's like, don't add resources that you don't know what to do with. It's like, don't buy stuff that you don't really know what to do with or have in your house. Yeah. Woo. I'm sure there's all stuff that Jay-Z would say too. He's funny, man. He did it right. He is a single. He's never been married. he's now 43. Yeah, 41 or something. He's at 40. He's like, I'm gonna settle down. This is crazy, because all the rest of us are married with kids. And then he just keeps, although maybe he did it wrong because he's gone a little crazy with COVID. The rest of us are like, it's kind of nice. We're just hunkered down with our kids and our family, and we don't have to do so much stuff. And he's like, I live by myself. I'm 40 years old. He's gotten really into biking on, not Peloton, but Zwift. trying to think what he would say here. He probably wouldn't be so self-reflective. Good thing I'm recording this. He'll go back and watch it. Hey, Jay-Z, you're awesome. He's funny. He's a programmer, but man, he does not seem like a programmer. He seems like a salesman. I don't know how he got both of those genes or something. He definitely gets excited. So yeah, anyway, in terms of, everyone saw the part where I'll send an email to remind people, but send me your slide and I will help you revise it probably, but it should be pretty simple if you want to, if you're planning on, pitching on demo day, and try and make a lot of progress. Cause that's really the main thing. That it doesn't really matter where you are. It matters like how fast you're moving, right? Like it doesn't matter how far ahead someone is if they're not moving, and you're moving fast. It doesn't matter how far behind you are if you're moving fast.
For the slide, what are the things we should include? Like, should we include growth on it, or is it more of just a business model sort of thing? Or
it's really those examples in there. I think I put them up at let me find that URL. I think it's like hmcinc.com/YC. Yeah. hmcinc.com/YC is just an example of like 10 of them from Y Combinator. It's really, you don't overthink it, but you're trying to get across in one simple slide everything someone needs to really know at the top, very superficial level, which is kind of the name of your company. Even that's not even that important, but usually you have a pretty logo. That's for trust, right? That's like, oh, cool. This company has a pretty looking logo. So they are somewhat competent at something that I can just get off the top of, I get that right away. And if they're good at making a pretty looking logo and they worked hard on that, then that implies to me that everything else they do is good, right? So that's why you have the logo that should look kind of nice. And then literally, 3-word type thing of like, we're Uber for buses in Ghana, or something like that, boop. And then either the order is not necessarily matter, but it's like, co-founders, Microsoft engineers, it's $10 billion market. 70% of transportation in Ghana is via these, whatever, or we already have a beta live with 40,000 users, something like that. Like basically your team, what it is, where you are now, where you're going to be, because you're moving so fast and the possibilities are endless. That's really, and that's your pitch too, really. And then, and it's not like getting someone to like giving them all the information, right? It's just getting them like excited or curious to learn more. You know, it's just a tease. It's a trailer. It's not the whole movie. It's not even a trailer. It's a teaser. Yeah. It's the coming fall 2020 Batman logo or something like that. You go, oh, what Batman? Batman back? Yeah. And Ron Lee, I want to say, like, you know, I don't know, when we talked 2 weeks ago, I guess, about doing maybe the Apple Watch thing, I just wanted to, like, I'm not saying you don't do the hardware, but it feels like that's a thing that you could, again, I'm like, do everything, work hard and try lots of things, you know, like try that. That seems like something that could just be quick and doesn't cost a lot of money. And, you know, it's just a faster thing. And then maybe that's not going to work, but then you're going to learn something that hopefully, if you really figure out that, like, oh God, I got a lot of pre-orders for a hardware device, or nobody is buying Apple Watches for the 2-year-olds, despite crazy Josh. Yeah. Anybody want to talk about anything? Go Celtics. I think they'll win tonight. It's all about incentives. That's actually the thing that's super, in terms of management and business and everything in life. I mean, people talk about like incentives matter, and they're kind of the only thing that matter, but it is so blatantly obvious when you see like 7-game series, whether it mostly in basketball, because it's the most scoring, is like a team that's down like 3-1, even if the other team's better, like they have, it's such a great example of like, of course the team ahead wants to win because they want to eliminate them and move on to the next round, and they know they got to win one of the next 3 games. But the team that's down 3-1, like they know absolutely they have to win tonight or their season is officially done. And they don't have any room for screwing up. And they're all playing hard, and they're all pros, and they're not mentally deciding not to try hard. But it is crazy how you just see it reflected in the game. Like Celtics are going to win tonight. And if I'm wrong, I guess never mind. But they just, whenever it's down, so a team is down 3-1, or it's like, you could just see how the team that's, even they're better, they just don't have the right incentives to finish it off. Once it gets to game 7, you see, that's why they're so good, because, you know, both teams are just like giving everything they can. So that's why you got to think about that stuff when aligning co-founder equity and vesting and employee salary. And I learned that the hard way at DreamHost a few times, where I thought a lot of our early employees, you know, we gave them like up to 2% equity and their big salary. And I was, oh, I lose people. I got bad internet up here. Anyway.
It's on Josh's end.
Okay. Yeah.
He's back.
Likey. Anyway.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So my question is along the lines of like, so with pricing, is it best to first create value and then think of making money, or do you sell value and make money at the same time? Like, let's say you're offering a new product, like, is it best to start like paid or yeah.
I think it depends on, right? That's always the answer. It depends. A lot of time I'm lean more towards the free. And it's funny too, that's another thing that's so crazy about people is like, there's really there's a 1 penny difference, right? Like it's literally the same thing. If something costs let's say something costs 2 cents and you're thinking like, should it cost 1 cent, right? It's like 1 cent cheaper, or it costs 99 cents and it should cost 98 cents. And it's the same if something costs 1 cent or 0 cents. It's just 1 cent more going from 0 to 1, right? It's just a penny. It doesn't matter. But it's, 0 is a very, very special price where it's because of that sales of that like speculation thing. There's a little bit where they're like, but what if I bought $1 trillion, right? So they're a little bit doing that. They're going, $1 trillion times a 0 is still 0. $1 trillion times a penny is actually getting to be a lot, even though they only need 1 or they only need 4. Or whatever. And so, you'll get like 100 times more adoption of something for it being free than for being like $1, depending if it's like a straight consumer type thing. But still, the most important thing, right, is trust. So you should think of it as, how do I get people to trust that this thing solves their problem reliably or whatever? And is it more important to get it out there to more people and to build up the trust that way and that it's free? Or, you know, or is it better to like charge a lot and because there isn't that big a market for it or whatever, and it will imply trust just by being expensive, and that'll give me more resources that I'll actually be able to, you know, hire people, and it actually will be a better product. But I would definitely say it's okay to go free. I mean, I think for your specific one, I would probably recommend free and ramping up later once, you know, or in a way where it's still the sort of there's a free trial, or there's not really any risk. They can at least try it and they only pay as they make money or something, you know, that it's only incremental. So it feels like just no risk. They're just trying not to, until they trust you that your thing is good and real and reliable and they see everyone else using it, they don't want to risk anything. They're probably willing to try it if it's not going to take a long time and it's not going to cost any money, or they only have upside. But yeah, if it's like, even if it doesn't cost any money, but it's going to be a lot of work, that's a risk of just wasting their time, you know? So, and then like I was saying, like once some people really believe, like understand that like, this thing is so great, unless there's a lot of, you know, other options they could switch to, like you can probably charge a fair amount later. It's like, it's more about trust than about price. It's first trust, but you know, unless there's like 20 people just like you that are just as trustworthy and then you guys are just competing all the time on price because there's nothing else to compare. It's sort of a race to the bottom. But if you can build any kind of sort of moat and be the most trustworthy or whatever, then if you're the best way if they realize, oh, this is saving me, this is worth $10 to me and it's free, they're happy about it. But then if tomorrow, it's like what Tesla did with the supercharging network, it was just free supercharging, right? You know, and that was just like, wow, okay, because people were like, is it gonna suck to try and do a road trip with an electric car, right? And so they had to really like get them past that. And now that it's at the point where everyone's like, it's okay. I mean, it still kind of sucks, I would say, but it's doable. And now they just charge, it's almost the same price as gasoline to fill up your Tesla at superchargers now. It's not much cheaper. It's a little bit cheaper, but it's kind of like, well, it's cheaper than gasoline. You know, it didn't really have to be free. It was really just more that I was like, not sure about electric cars and getting into it. And now he's past that kind of activation energy that there's enough people that are like, okay, it's not crazy. And there's a network everywhere and it works and the cars are good. And they're not really like, I would only buy this if I didn't ever have to pay for fuel again. It was like, and it's cheaper than the alternative anyway, just a little bit. Yeah. So I could hang around anymore. I got 3 more minutes, then I got to run a kindergarten Zoom. But you
I have a question about incorporating. Like, when should you do that, if at all?
Yeah, I think that's a similar thing. I think when you're going to raise money, it ties in, or if you're going to hire somebody for real, like not a co-founder partner where you trust them and you can just be like, well, we're going to be 50-50 once we incorporate and raise money and have customers, right? And you can be like, yeah. Then I wouldn't bother. But yeah, you get pretty far along before you do that. I mean, if you get into like if you get money for like Accelerate or something, they're going to need you to do it. But it takes like a day or two and you just click on Clerky and it doesn't cost much. So don't over worry about it or think about it. Like literally you can have them all agreed, you've raised this guy's giving me 100K, this guy's giving me 250K, this guy's giving me 300K. I still haven't incorporated, right? You just tell everyone, guess what? Everyone wire the money on Friday. You might need a couple extra days to set up a bank account, but even Little Mercury, they set up this like in less than an hour. So yeah, you're pretty much like the day before, maybe 2 days before you expect to receive money from an investor, you can just like create a company, create a bank account and say, here's our wire info. And you're kind of good to go. So just in time, lazy execution. Well, I'm gonna get going. I can leave Gary here if you like to listen to him or something. I don't know what happens if I leave the meeting, if it ends it all, but pleasure. I'll be sending emails and seeing you guys at office hours and next week or whatever. Send me an email.
I'm going to take a nap. That's what I'm going to do.
You're going to what?
Take a nap.
Lucky. All right. I'm closing this whole meeting. No, just leaving. Just leaving. All right. Bye.
Thanks.
Everybody.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Oh, I can assign a new host. Aren't too many left. Let's see. Is he gone? Stop.